Apparently, the Attorney General decided there were things that weren't.
If I could ask you a question about the evictions. No, thank you. On the evictions and the moratorium that lapsed on Saturday night, what is your strategy to prevent potentially millions of people from being evicted from their homes, given what we are told your administration is considering a targeted moratorium is likely to face legal challenges?
Any call for moratorium based on the Supreme Court recent decision is likely to face obstacles. I've indicated to the CDC I'd like them to look at other alternatives than the one that is in power in existence, which the court has declared they're not going to allow to continue. And the CDC will have something to announce to you in the next hour to 2 hours.
On overseas coronavirus vaccines, should other high-income countries follow the lead of the United States and increase donations to low and middle-income countries?
I think those countries that have been able to cover their population and have the ability to provide either dollars and or vaccine for the 100 or so poor nations that need help should do so. We had that discussion at the G7. A number of those countries said they were going to do that. Some have followed through. The point I was making is, though, I've kept the commitment, we've kept the commitment that we would do what we said, which is more than all the rest of the countries combined thus far.
Why don't you close down the border, President? You can do that quickly and finish building the wall that a good president built. Shame on you.
For their constituents. And it's clear to me and to most of the medical experts that the decisions being made, like not allowing mask mandates in school and the like, are bad health policy. Bad health policy.
Mr. President, I have a question about something that you just said.
I'm sure you do.
Thank you. You just said there's no wall high enough and no ocean wide enough to protect us from the virus. So what is the thinking behind letting untested and unvaccinated migrants cross the southern border into U.S. cities in record numbers?
Amen.
What we're doing, we have not withdrawn the order that is sometimes critical or criticized, saying that unvaccinated people should go back across the border. But unaccompanied children is a different story, because that's the most humane thing to do, is to test them and to treat them and not send them back alone.
And follow
Mr. President, have you spoken with Governor Cuomo today?
I have not.
And then one other question on the virus. You just said we have hope to continue our aggressive efforts to get the unvaccinated vaccinated. Other countries have found a lot of success in requiring vaccines in public places. New York City just announced today that they'll require vaccines for restaurants and gyms. Do you think more cities and states should institute rules like that?
I do.
And are you going to publicly call on them? Should they institute a vaccine passport type system, or it's up to each city and state to figure that out on their own?
I'm sorry.
Do you think that they should institute a vaccine passport type system or some sort of verification to use public spaces?
I don't think they need to do that. I think they just need to give the authority of those restaurants or businesses to say, in order to come in, you have to give proof that you've been vaccinated, or that you can't come in. Take a couple days.
And yet we let the immigrants come in here by the hundreds of thousands, Mr. President. You're encouraging them to come in with the virus.
He should be prosecuted. And what is your message to the women who have now accused him of sexually harassing them and abusing them?
Look, what I said was, if the investigation Attorney General concluded that the allegations are correct, that back in March, that I would recommend he resign. That's what I'm doing today. I've not read the report. I don't know the detail of it. All I know is the end result.
So, Mr. President, COVID, if I could really quickly, it's the eviction moratorium. Can you explain a little bit more why it took so long to have a possible eviction moratorium be put into place? There were people, this inspired on Saturday. I'm wondering, there are folks who are saying it took too long for this to happen.
Well, look, the courts made it clear that the existing moratorium was not constitutional. It wouldn't stand. And they made that clear back in, I guess, July 15th or July 18th. In the meantime, what I've been pushing for and calling for is we have billions of dollars that we've given to states to provide for rent and utilities for those people who can't afford to stay in their homes because they can't, in an apartment, they can't pay their rent. And so we're urging them to distribute those funds to the landlords. I believe that would take care of the vast majority of what needs to be done to keep people in their apartments now. And so that's what we're working on. Some states have done it and some communities have, but they have not. The money is there. It's not, we don't have to send it out. It's been sent out to the states and counties. Billions of dollars for the express purpose of providing for back rent and rent the people who are in the middle of this crisis. And that's there. That's what we're pushing now. And we've been pushing that. That's the immediate thing to do. Take one more question.
President, thank you so much. There was an expectation that you would be announcing again new vaccines to the world today, new other than the ones you promised. Are you ready to send more vaccines to the world? And there is a delegation from the White House going to Brazil tomorrow. Are they bringing more vaccines? Are they announcing more vaccines to Brazil?
No. Are they announcing more vaccines overall?
Overall, and then to Brazil, to the delegation coming to Brazil tomorrow, will be bringing vaccines.
The answer is I don't know whether the delegation going physically has vaccines with them. We have provided vaccines to
Are
them.
they making the announcement? Are they announcing them?
No. There's a need for several billion doses around the world. We have committed to over 500 million doses, and we're trying to provide for more and provide for the capacity of countries like India to be able to produce the vaccine themselves. And we're helping them do that. That's what we're doing now. And we're trying to, and by the way, it's free. We're not charging anybody anything. And we're trying to do as much as we possibly can. Thank you.
The administration is about to announce a new partial eviction moratorium, COVID-related. Can you tell us any more about that? And are you sure it's going to pass Supreme Court muster?
The answer is twofold. One, I've sought out constitutional scholars to determine what is the best possibility that would come from executive action or the CDC's judgment. What could they do that was most likely to pass muster constitutionally? The bulk of the constitutional scholarship says that it's not likely to pass constitutional muster, number one. But there are several key scholars who think that it may, and it's worth the effort. But the present, you could not, the court's already ruled on the present eviction moratorium. So I think what you're going to see, and I want to make it clear. I told you I would not tell the Justice Department or the medical experts, the scientists, what they should say or do. So I don't want to get ahead. The CDC has to make this. I asked the CDC to go back and consider other options that may be available to them. You're going to hear from them what those other options are. I have been informed they're about to make a judgment as to potential other options. Whether that option will pass constitutional measure with this administration, I can't tell you. I don't know. There are a few scholars who say it will, and others who say it's not likely to. But at a minimum, by the time it gets litigated, we'll probably give some additional time while we're getting that $45 billion out to people who are, in fact, behind in the rent and don't have the money. That's why it was passed in the act that we passed in the beginning of my administration, and it went to the states. We were under the impression that the states were moving this money out relatively rapidly. So, for example, if I'm in an apartment if you're in an apartment and you're behind on 4 or 5 months rent, and let's say your rent is $2,000 a month, I'm just making this up out of the blue, and you're behind, you need $10,000 to catch up. Hardly anybody has that $10,000. But there's money that the states have that can give to the landlord that $10,000 to the back rent. The future rent, it's unlikely, at least the hope is, since they have been made whole to that point, that they'd be inclined, because the economy is growing, inclined not to throw someone out in the street, keep that person, no guarantee, keep that person in the apartment, keep the kids in the same school district, and count on being able to have the opportunity for that person to be able, who may now be employed, to pay their rent. But in the meantime, I've asked that, is there any safety valve we can put in? And it's the one I explained to you. Again, CDC will announce that and the details of exactly how it works. I'm not telling, I told them I want them to take a look. I didn't tell them what they had to do. And my hope is it's going to be a new moratorium that in some way, and I'm not going to announce it now, let them announce it, in some way covers close to 90% of the American people who are renters. And so that's all I can tell you now. Thank you very much.
What's the difference?
Because it's a, let them explain that to you, okay? I don't want to get too far. Thank you.
Is Kovac swing enough to get shots in arms?
To say happy birthday, what? I mean, he knows the message. We had a little discussion while I was down there. He knows the message. He's decided. See you all later.
Investigators say he broke the law by sexually harassing 11 women and retaliated against a former employee.
Back in March, you said that if the investigation confirmed the allegations against Governor Cuomo, then he should resign. So will you now call on him to resign, given the investigators said the 11 women were credible?
I stand by that statement.
Are you now calling on him to resign?
Yes.
And if he doesn't resign, do you believe he should be impeached and removed from office?
Let's take one thing at a time here. I think he should resign.
Cuomo, defiant as ever, claiming the investigation is political and says he did nothing wrong.
I want you to know directly from me that I never touched anyone inappropriately or made inappropriate sexual advances. They ascribe motives I never had. And simply put, they heard things that I just didn't say.
And Cuomo trying to defend himself by claiming he kisses everyone and showing this very bizarre and horrible picture montage.
I love the montage. Me too.
The montage was horrible, but a couple of people. We have it now. We gotta play it for you. Let's watch.
Indeed, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of photos of me using the exact same gesture. I do it with everyone, black and white, young and old, straight and LGBTQ, powerful people, friends, strangers, people who I meet on the street.
Well, the one we didn't show you was the ones where he used President Obama and President Bush hugging hurricane victims, as if that was the same thing. Jesse, it looks like you brought some thoughts.
I have the report here. Needed a forklift to get into the studio. Did I read the whole thing? I read the executive summary. It's pretty damning. I thought we had the worst mayor, now we have the worst governor. So these are the allegations. Kissing on the lips, grabbing butts and breasts. Asked a state trooper if she could help him find a girlfriend who could, quote, handle pain.
Love it.
Groping waists, legs, and back, sliding hands pretty much everywhere, and just relentlessly hitting on every aide that was alone with him in an elevator or his office.
Man.
Now, this report was written by an AG who has aspirations politically, and It said all these women were uncomfortable, scared, humiliated, and offended, and the AG found his responses contrived and lacking credibility. And then he just denied everything and said that it was misinterpreted, or even accused some of the women of initiating the physical contact. Some of the stuff was interesting. It could be like obvious misinterpretation. So he brings some woman into his office and he shows the woman a humidor that President Clinton had given as a gift. And he explains the humidor, and she perceives that as some sort of subtle romantic suggestion involving Monica Lewinsky. We get it. Now, he counters that he shows people that come into his office gifts from all types of people. And one of the things he says that inside the humidor here, we have legal Cuban cigars. We got these cigars before the embargo was put up. So that's open to interpretation. The video was incredible because I actually thought it was convincing until he shows videos and pictures of Obama hugging hurricane victims and George H.W. Bush hugging Katrina victims. The line is, you can hug or kiss on the cheek. He was grabbing you-know-what and kissing on the mouth. That is unacceptable. So he says New Yorkers aren't naive and they're not going to go for this, and they know it's political. And you know what? Maybe it's an Italian thing. Right? And that's what Italians do, and that's what old guys do. And I'm just
You
gonna.
look at me.
I'm sorry, and I'm gonna hire a consultant to tell me maybe I shouldn't do this anymore. Case closed. Can you hold on?
Well, I don't know.
I don't know.
The news that was just made right before the show was that Joe Biden stood by what he had said back in, I think, March or April, in which he said that if he's found to be guilty, he should be resign, and that he might even be prosecuted. So President Biden, though, Katie, just now in his press conference, he doesn't answer the question by saying Andrew Cuomo should resign. He just says yes, yes, so that you don't actually have the words, but the meaning is there. He's calling on the governor to resign. Does Cuomo survive this part?
Well, back in March, Joe Biden walked himself into a corner by answering a hypothetical, because the question was, if these things turn out to be true, will you ask him to resign? Should he resign? He said yes, so today he had the option of going back on his word or saying that he should resign by simply answering the question yes. If I were advising Governor Cuomo, being paid to advise him, or if I were his brother, who's an anchor at another network, I would advise him not to resign. I would say the Democratic Party has made mistakes on this before. Al Franken is one of them. Bill Clinton went on after the 90s to be a star of the Democratic Party, made a lot of people famous, had a lot of endorsements, made a lot of money through the Clinton Foundation. And when it comes to the state legislature, because the report is not a criminal indictment, and the Attorney General of New York said that today, that she can't pursue criminal charges, that other charges can be pursued, it's up to the legislature to do this. And that comes down to Cuomo Democrats being loyal to him, and the left in New York, who is thirsty to get Cuomo out because they're on the side of the Attorney General. And that's where it does get very political. So in terms of whether he will hold on or not, is to be foreseen, but based on other scandals that Democrats have been through and survived, I would say he can survive.
Yeah, what's your take on that?
Well, the guy's weathered more storms than the Gordon fisherman. Feel free to use that, America. But I mean, at this point, he has more accusers than supporters. But he also, we were like watching two stories at the same time. The actual story itself, and will the media have the attention span and not get exhausted by the story before we should? So he is counting on that because he understands how the cycle works. We report, and then we watch our ratings dip and we move on to something else. And he's just saying, I'm going to ride this thing out. Unless he borrows some blackface from Governor Northam, he might end up sticking around. I love the montage. The logic makes no sense. Imagine if Dana showed people pictures of Jasper, and Jasper's on your lap, and you're kissing Jasper, and then you're in HR, and you go, but I do it with my dog! I do it with my dog! You know, but,
that would be quite a story.
Also, I didn't know about the pain thing, about what he said to the cop. That's a little kinky. That goes totally to the nipple clips and things that we talk about.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But the other thing that he kind of points out, which is interesting, in the montage, and he's kissing all these men and grabbing their faces, and he's kind of reminding that maybe maybe sex, this biology is different. You know, it's like, right there, you go, yeah, but you can't do that to a girl. And you can't do that to a girl in your office.
That's not what they were saying. I mean, Miranda, from a legal standpoint, what do you think his position is?
Well, I'm glad you asked me a legal question. First of all, I agree with Katie's analysis, absolutely. I think she had it nailed. Al Franken is the ghost that should haunt people who are, pulling the trigger already.
You don't think this is different than the Al Franken?
I do.
Well, it may be different, but there will be regret. Pick up that thing again, Jesse. This, ladies and gentlemen, for all its impressive heft, is not a legal document. That is a political document. A document put together by the furthest left politician in elective office in this far left state. Letitia James, I've known her forever. She is absolutely furiously longing for Andrew Cuomo's job. I'm not saying that the allegations are false, so I make no judgment about that. I just want people to know this is not proof. This is politics. Now comes a legal process. He has due process rights, just like anybody else, and I would urge him, as Katie did, to tough it out, make your case, prove that you don't have to prove your innocence, but prove that these allegations against you are false. Your father weathered his own storms, different type storms. Wonderful man, Mario Cuomo. There's a very public family. Matilda, the mother, still alive, wonderful lady. I think that I give him at least 50-50, maybe.
You want to clarify one thing, Katie?
I am not urging Andrew Cuomo to do anything. I'm saying if I were a Democrat trying to save my boss's job, that's what I would urge him to do.
But Geraldo makes a really good point. When you hear people asking Bill de Blasio, so are you thinking about the governor? It's like there actually is something worse out there than Cuomo. There's something worse out there. And it's like,
You mean we might get more de Blasio?
yes, he could actually, yes. There's something worse out there. And he's right about James. I mean, she's as far hard left as you get. So, due process.
Here we go again. All right, President Biden trying to clean up confusion over COVID and is shaming red states over a spike in cases.
Has been somehow he would manage to muscle through this, survive, and then run for re-election for a fourth term. The Democrats would like to be rid of him and move on, and that desire is why they will figure out the impeachment thing if they have to. Even though there's not a lot of roadmap, there's not much of a roadmap for it. They'll figure it out if it means that's the only way to get rid of him.
Joyce, I read through the report and the attachments, and there's a letter from his brother, Chris Cuomo, who's a news anchor over at CNN, where he was seeming to help or trying to help with messaging around one of the accusers. Is that a legal predicament for Chris Cuomo or just an ethical one at this point?
It seems to me that it's more ethical than it is anything else at this point. But Nicole, I just need to echo Claire's comments about how in some ways we've come very far as women here. The notion that this governor actually felt forced to circle the wagons to respond to these complaints, even though his response is completely tone deaf and I think does more to push people away than it does to convince them that he is in fact not responsible for the acts that this report suggests he was involved in. Women have made enormous strides, but it's very easy to ignore these strides. And we've heard far too many women who have been ignored. We've had to bring forth this really sort of motto that always comes up in these cases of believing the women, because people don't listen to them, they don't believe them. We saw the reversal in the Cosby case. It is so important that women continue to come forward, but as importantly, that we find a way as a society for women in this situation with a very powerful man to have their voices heard without facing this fear of retaliation or repercussion. We have a long way to go.
Return the country to godly principles.
I want to ask you all to stay with us. I want to bring Dr. Kavita Patel in on the other news of the day. The press availability was scheduled to tout some of these milestones on the fight against the coronavirus pandemic. The president talking about the doses sent, part of our vaccine diplomacy, if you will. The president touting the 70% milestone that he had hoped we'd achieve about 4 weeks ago being reached this week, as well as an incredible uptick. I'm going to put on our screen the states where we have seen the biggest jump in first-time vaccine shots being administered. They are the states seeing the largest surges some of the most tragic hospitalizations. President seeming to want to message to these two Americas, Dr. Patel, to vaccinated Americans, you're going to be
All
right.
political.
To unvaccinated Americans, ignore the disinformation, protect
He
yourself and
fails
your
to
families, and
mention
take the damn shot.
that many of those states are on the borders where the illegal immigrants are coming in with the virus by the hundreds of thousands, shamefully.
For the president to actually address the American public and take questions. And the fact that he's doing this consistently at any chance he gets tells you just how serious the situation is. I think his message was spot on. I hope that it actually turns some hearts and minds, especially governors and political leaders. I think the most important thing for me to hear was he was very clear that the 7 states where governors or other people are getting in the way of schools being able to mask or local cities putting back indoor masking ordinance, that is who I hope he can reach quickly.
How about reaching his own brain and shutting down the border, ma'am, and stopping all this illegal immigration, drugs, rapists, and people coming in with the virus, untested, unchecked. I ran into one person the other day from Romania out on the streets of Kentucky looking for food for his 3-year-old child and his wife. Came from Romania to Mexico to California and then on into Kentucky. I tried to help him and I did help him. But that's not fair to them and it's not fair to us to encourage people to come to this country that are sick and afflicted and coming for some illegal raise. Come in legally.
Vaccinated people are. I see it. My fellow physicians, I'm scared. We got our shot.
Tickle MSNBC liberal language.
We're more vulnerable. I think we need a lot more honesty about what we know, but we also need some honesty, Nicole, about what we don't know. We didn't think we'd be here right now. We did not. And we have to admit that this virus is outsmarting us. And we need to just be
Well, it wouldn't take a whole lot to outsmart Joe Biden, unfortunately, right now in his mental capacity.
We're trying to watch for what we don't know, but we can only do so much when it's a novel virus and a never seen before pandemic.
Parties, you want me on that wall. You need me on that wall. We use words like honor, code, loyalty. We use these words as the backbone of a life spent defending something. You use them as a punchline. I have neither the time nor the inclination to explain myself to a man who rises and sleeps under the blanket of the very freedom that I provide, and then questions the manner in which I provide it. I would rather you just said thank you and went on your way. Otherwise, I suggest you pick up a weapon and stand a post. Either way, I don't give a damn what you think you are entitled to. Did you order the code red? I did the job. Did you order the code red? You're damn right I did!
Please, the court, I suggest the members be dismissed so that we can move to an immediate Article 39A session. The witness has rights.
Captain Ross.
Jack?
Melissa, stop. It's very, very clear. You're not going to be able to persuade Americans when you deliver a performance like that.
I do not disagree. I think that he was much less effective than he was in recent weeks. A couple of quick points. One is that the two macho, defiant governors, Abbott and DeSantis, have now to face the reality that their states lead the league in COVID infections and hospitalizations.
Of course, Geraldo, because you're letting all the illegal immigrants in those two states with the virus.
And now people are dying in Texas and Florida, and I submit to you that that's not.
Are they dying?
That's not a random fact. They're being hospitalized. But thank you for pointing that out. The other thing I want to say about de Blasio, I don't like de Blasio at all. He has run this city into the toilet. But I like this mandate.
You like this mandate?
I do.
I think it'll be more popular than
Do you like this mandate?
No, I hate this mandate, and it's about.
As long as you don't hate me.
I don't hate you, Geraldo, but I do hate the mandate, and I hate that you love the mandate.
Okay.
If you listen to the language that Bill de Blasio is using when he announced this today, he's talking about freezing out essentially an entire class and group of people. And he doesn't want to talk about race. Conveniently, the left uses race as a political weapon all the time. But when it comes to this, they don't want to be held accountable.
Right.
For the state or the government forcing black and brown people to take a vaccine that they maybe have legitimate questions about, that the CDC has been confusing about, that the president has been unclear about. And yet now they are saying that your livelihood is going to go away if you don't submit to this mandate by the government. And when he talks about creating a subclass and that you'll have a better life if you do take this, meaning the opposite is, well, your life is going to be miserable if you don't, I think that that's a big problem for the long term outside of COVID, considering all of the things the government has said they have the power to do over the last year, whether it's shutting down churches, taking away other constitutional rights that you have. That's a larger issue moving forward. But on the issue of Ron DeSantis, real quickly, there's this new thing called DeSantis derangement syndrome. He was the one who was able to protect his seniors, get them vaccinated when the vaccine came out, and keep his economy open in Florida. And the White House is looking at him for 2024, which is why they bring it up every single day in the briefing room to
All
attack him.
politics.
And if you want to talk about rising cases, they're in a free society, which are now the red states, there is risk. People will get sick from things. Not everybody, but this idea that nobody's ever going to get sick again is absolutely ridiculous. It's not going to happen.
Just let her have the last word, Geraldo. We got to pay some bills. Up next, police getting the power to fight back against mobs and protesters harassing them just because of their jobs.
Sharpton, host of MSNBC's Politics Nation and president of the National Action Network, plus Texas State Representative Diego Bernal is back. I want to start with you, Rev. Tell me where things are. That was the president speaking about the urgency to get legislation through in a way we don't hear every single day from the White House, but clearly that is what is in his heart. The other side of that coin, though, is an unwillingness to blow up the filibuster to achieve that. So where are we?
We are witnessing an escalating move of people from every part of this country saying that we are looking at an existential threat to our right to vote. When we met with the president, the 8 civil rights organization heads, including me from National Action Network, we said it was going to be a summer of activism, and many groups from Melanie Campbell and others who got people arrested every day or so, to today, Congressman Al Green and others, to now these legislators coming. I think that when the Texas Democrats took the stand, it became the impetus for everyone to rally around, because these people are sacrificing away from their families, away from what is comfortable for them.
Oh, nonsense. This guy is such a racist. I've watched him for 30 years.
Calls for the Senate and calls for the Congress to not go
Nothing but a corrupt politician. And I mean totally corrupt.
Guarantee that we're going to have federal legislation that will not recess our right to vote. There's nothing more serious than that. And I think that when you see people going to jail, people going to meetings, people going to vigils, we had a vigil.
Yeah, rioting in all the cities, burning and looting the cities across America, and doing everything illegally.
All the way to the National March, August 28th.
Shame on you with Black Lives Matter and Antifa. And shame on you for what you did in Washington, D.C. before even January the 6th event took place.
We have one of those Texas Democrats, Representative Bernal. You've been invoked. Talk about what you think you have done to change the conversation and what the...
This is just more liberalism from MSNBC.
Let's go in reverse. The reinforcements mean everything to us. There is a moment where you do feel like you're standing alone, and that might be because you're sort of suffering alone because, as the Reverend said, you're sacrificing alone. But as time has gone on, not only do we get reinforcements, not only
The 2020 election was totally rigged by big high-tech organizations and by the oligarchy corporations, leaders, money. money, and more money.
Constituents, their citizens, their right and freedom to vote is abridged. That cannot be what happens. That cannot be who we are. This is not an everyday political debate. Look, I'm a Democrat in Texas. I'm used to losing votes. That's not what this is. This is fundamental. This is rigging the game. This is drinking water. This is different. And what is if we lose this, a fair debate on everything else doesn't even matter. And so we're the help that we have.
Yeah, I mean, Phil Rucker, that's where I guess my concern as a former strategist lies, that the Democrats, by still sort of haggling amongst themselves, haven't begun to make it politically dangerous for Republicans to oppose their autocratic impulses. I want to show you Cory Booker's comments. Let's talk about them on the other side.
We know what is at stake
Another
when they
racist.
go after voting rights. We don't know this just about our
Yeah, you don't want to have voter ID. You want to vote them where they're not even voting. Shamefully.
By changing the rules to
Socialist.
stay in power. We know
Communist.
this in Turkey, where you get democratically elected, but when you get into power, you begin to change the laws so that you stay in power. All across the world right now, there is an assault on the ideas of freedom and equality and inclusion and democracy. But we together stand up today and say, not here, not now, not on our watch.
To his credit, Phil, Cory Booker has always been on the front line of this fight, but all of the sort of attention around trying to persuade Joe Manchin and Senator Sinema to consider carve-outs of the filibuster have precluded them from taking that argument and the arguments that the Rev and Representative Bernal are making to the country and making this, I mean, you've got, I think, 59% of all Americans support making it easier to have automatic registration, making it easier to, anyone can vote by mail. There's a whole lot of public support behind an agenda that the Democrats haven't really had an opportunity to take to Republican voters and Republicans in the country because they're organizing them.
I've been assaulted with beverages.
You could have charged.
Surely I could.
You could have charged a crime against that guy who
Sue
did that.
someone for $25,000.
What was the beverage?
It was a beer, Geraldo. I've also had water and vodka.
Did you punch him?
No, well, you gotta read the book.
You can't save the world that way.
I just don't think this is going to maybe have a little chilling effect in Nassau County, but not in Manhattan County, where a lot of the riots happen. And so hopefully this kind of bolsters the protection for police officers. But Greg's right. These DAs do drop charges a lot. But when you put this in front of a county judge, a county judge is a little tougher than anybody else, and he might actually let this case go.
Yeah, and quickly, Geraldo, I mean, that's where these things have to happen. If they can't happen in maybe New York City, but more of a local level of people take local school, local county boards doing this to ensure their own little community is protected.
True, and Nassau County is a red county. They voted for Trump. Hannity lives there. O'Reilly lives there. It's it's a hotbed.
The pro-law and order county.
No, I like the messaging is so important to say to cops, we love you, man.
Yep.
We love you. You're for us.
We do love them. Okay.
Dismount patrol.
Praise the Lord and pass the ammunition of godly principles and love and prayers, heart and soul, for all of us, red, yellow, brown, black, and white, born and unborn, handicapped, police officers, first responders, children and seniors,